everyone. Welcome to the Find a Moment podcast, where we navigate the space between ideals and everyday life. We are your hosts, Gretchen Roberts and Jennifer Ford, and we look forward to finding a moment with you today. Welcome back to the Find a Moment podcast. We are continuing our series on education today. If you haven't listened to our first episode in this series, you will want to check that out because we discuss the introduction to education and we define what we believe it means to be educated and different philosophies of education and talk about our ideals for ourselves and our families. So you'll want to check out the first episode if you haven't already. And today we are going to jump into what education looks like throughout the school age years. And one thing we always want you to remember is that image of the hourglass. And like Jennifer has said before, that as long as there is sand left in that hourglass, you are never too late to begin valuing education in your own life or in the lives of your family, or to modifying and changing the approach that you have taken to education for you or your family. So it is never too late, and we look forward to this discussion with you today.
The different stages of educating as your children are moving from being really small into teen years and then like getting ready to move them towards adulthood and independence. Those years all look very different. So starting out in the younger years, I know for me, I felt like that was such a sweet spot because I felt very capable. My degree was in elementary education, and
Mm,
oh man, I just loved all the picture books and the little math
yes.
manipulatives and spending time catching bugs outside and watercoloring on the porch. And to me those years were very idyllic, and I miss that because I had a comfort level there, because also little ones are not questioning you, and they don't know as much as when they get older they know everything. um, and those years were very fun and sweet to me because I felt very confident and competent then. As they get older, they challenge your thinking and they challenge your direction, and they don't believe everything you say is readily. Those years are definitely harder and more refining as a parent, especially as a parent who is trying to also teach your children just in the more school sense of education. But for the younger years, Gretchen, talk to me about sort of what that looked like for your family, and sprinkle in some ideals in everyday life while you're at
Yes.
it.
Oh, when you just mentioned watercolors outside, I'm like, oh,
Oh,
it just brought forth all those
I
memories and
know.
images. Oh my goodness, it's such a sweet time. I would say the younger years, if I have advice to offer or kind of what my ideals were, I mean, it was so much of it is being outside and being in nature.
Hmm.
And I just feel like you cannot go wrong when you are just outside exploring. And, whether, no matter where you live, you can go to a park or, find some place in nature to explore. But we even did something, just as simple as what the kids referred to as the dirt pile in our backyard. We took a little area that was kind of like where you could put like a sandbox or something, but we would just get bags of various things from Lowe's or Home Depot, and sometimes it would be rocks or mulch or a dirt and sand mix, or just various things, and we just had this fairly big sized pile for them to dig and play and explore. And oh my goodness, they had so much fun in the dirt pile. So, even just little simple things like that can lead to just hours of exploration and play. And so, kind of releasing yourself too from the expectation that school is something that I am sitting here with a book teaching you something. When they are all together and they're exploring and creating in that dirt pile, like that is education. So there's part of releasing your mind from these constraints, kind of like I told you, I guess. I don't remember saying that, but that was so funny of just you have to let that go. So sometimes we have to let go of what we think is education. And let, so being outside in the younger years is just huge. And honestly, we may talk about this more in when we get to our kind of health and wellness in the future episodes series thing that we're going to do, but it doesn't matter what the temperature is outside. It doesn't matter if it's raining outside. It can be hot, it can be cold. You can still be outside. You can stretch yourself. And, I just think that's a really important thing that we kind of are hesitant to that, oh, if it's too hot or oh, if it's raining, oh, if it's too cold, we just got to go out and do it. You can layer up, you can get soaked in the rain in the summertime. I mean, there's just so much wonder and curiosity that develops from that environment. And then having the rhythms of I think rhythms in the younger years are very important to have those times of outside play and rhythms of mealtime together and cleanup time together and bedtime. I think building in those rhythms allows you to kind of have some anchors for your ideals throughout the day. I know I would use mealtime a lot as a time to read aloud to them because they are all sitting and eating. So at lunch, I would, read aloud fiction to everybody and, just some great stories, whether, they were funny stories or classic heart-wrenching stories or kind of some more nonfiction of like hero tales and different things like that. So incorporating those moments to where, oh, they are all sitting and eating, and it's kind of a rest from their outside play. This would be a good time to incorporate some reading. So it's more of kind of a natural rhythm and less of kind of this forced, you must sit and pay attention to me. Especially in the younger years, you have to harness those times of when they're naturally sitting, which is another reason that bedtime is such a great time for read alouds,
Mm.
right? Because they are winding down, they are getting more tired. And so you can just use that natural rhythm of their day and their sleep wake cycle to incorporate great stories. And I know that that is my older children, that's some of their favorite memories. We have an outside porch upstairs, and my husband did a lot of bedtime reading because when you are the homeschool mom and you've kind of been reading and talking a lot all day, like by the end of the day, I was hoarse. so, so he would always do bedtime reading kind of with them all grouped together. And I know that my older children have shared that that is some of their favorite memories of
Mm.
all the different books and series that he read aloud to them at bedtime. So you can incorporate, your whole family, get the grandparents involved in reading aloud and different things like that with them too. So just using those natural rhythms, I think in the younger years are a way to kind of hold on to your ideals to where, and then also accepting the everyday life of the bickering and the struggles. And I think that that is learning too, because they are learning to form those relationships and to relate to other people and to compromise. And maybe they're helping out with a younger sibling, or maybe their older sibling is helping them, and so they're learning these relational things that are just invaluable lessons. Another thing I think in the younger years is when you have some children that are still napping, to then use that natural time of the younger ones are asleep, having a nap, maybe that's the time that you do some of that, just more kind of didactic, like a math lesson or something like that, to where it's a more lesson time while the younger ones are napping. So, kind of looking at your season of life and kind of where your children all are, especially if you have a mixed age range, and just seeing what are kind of our natural rhythms and how can I use those to kind of my advantage of scheduling in and building in those learning opportunities. And that's when, in those natural moments, or when you can kind of spark that curiosity and ask those questions and use your magnifying glass to look at that bug in the dirt pile out in the backyard. And, and maybe some will learn to, as mine did, to start fires with that magnifying glass with some pine straw in the
There's
dirt
some
piles.
science there.
Yes, definitely.
We
Yes.
have pictures of our girls when we used to do book club at your house years ago. We have several pictures of everybody posed and smiling around the dirt pile. There's a group
Oh,
of at least a dozen little people around that dirt pile.
that
And they
is
stayed
great.
back there happy and dreaming up whatever they were doing, cooking up stuff for
Yes.
hours. We just sit inside and be like, "Are they still out there? Okay, we're good."
Yes. And remember, they would
Um,
also put on the costumes. Like we had like all those like prairie
oh,
dresses and things. I remember that
yes.
with your girls. They would.
Oh my
So it
goodness.
was also a time for
Mm,
dress up back there, and the boys would have on their
yes.
cowboy hats and their leather chaps.
Oh, that's awesome. Back to the homestead.
That's
Um,
right.
Talking about literature and sharing books with our children, one of the things that we can do in our resources on our website is incorporate some book lists and some links.
Yes.
I know Sarah Mackenzie's Read Aloud Revival was a great source of book options for us for years. I mean, and so much of what she shared we incorporated. And also there's quite a few book lists that are great for all ages on the Ambleside Online website.
Hmm.
That's a curriculum that is it follows Charlotte Mason's education principles, but just the book lists alone are gold. They are so
Yes.
rich and so beautiful. So we can link some book lists on there as well. The everyday life you mentioned with your kids, like if there's bickering and arguing or whatever, if that's happening, I would look at that as like employment security because they still need you. So you are still engaged in training your children and they need you. That's why they have you is because they are not fully formed. They do not have the ability to regulate their emotions, particularly when they are frustrated or hungry or tired. And so our job is to enter into those moments that will definitely happen if you are educating your children at home. Even if your kids are in school all day somewhere else, they're still going to have those moments. So that is
Hmm.
job security for us. One other thing that it may be a no-brainer for some folks, but one thing that I had to figure out is that when you're doing read alouds with your children, particularly, this isn't really an issue if you're reading picture books, but for chapter books and things like that, let your children do something with their hands while
Hmm.
you're reading to them, whether it's Legos or blocks or painting or coloring or clay. Let their hands be busy because their minds actually engage better when their hands have something to do. And I think there's some folks who feel like should my kid just be sitting there being still? Don't do anything else but just listen. You shouldn't be doing anything else. Have all your attention on what you're listening to. But that's you don't have to do it that way. And your child will not enjoy read alouds if you do it that way. So
Right.
give them choices, something that they could do that's quiet and let them do that and I guarantee you they will absorb far more than they would if you just made them sit there and be still and do
So
nothing else.
true.
So that's just something that I remember from those early years thinking, is this okay? Yes,
Yes.
it is more than okay. It's
Right.
essential.
Or if they
Let
need
them
to
do
be
something.
like upside down on the couch or
That's a thing. That also.
in all the different areas.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
So I feel like we covered the younger years pretty well, and I know that ranges. I mean, that's a broad age range, younger years. And in our notes, we have going into teen years, so that kind of feels like a big jump. But at the same time, we could even group like preteen, teen. So let's
hmm.
say maybe middle school, high school ish. What does that look like? Educating our tweens and teens.
Hmm.
Do you have any initial thoughts on that?
Sure. I think as you move into those older years, that you are incorporating them into your decisions a lot more than you did in the younger years. I think in the younger years, a lot of what you read and what you study, and a lot of it is you as the mom or, as the teacher deciding kind of what you're going to study that year. But for me, as you move into the teen years, getting their feedback. And, one of the just practically things I would do is I would say, here are kind of your options for math this year. We can do this, we can do this, we can do this. What is your preference? And do you want to take some time and looking into these and decide what you want to do? And so giving them the choice and giving them some autonomy, I think is really important. And it really sets the stage, I think, for being a lifelong learner and for them choosing how they want to learn and what they want to study. Here are your options for history. Do you want to do this or study this time period or study this, and giving them the autonomy to make those decisions. I think it has helped my children a lot with the transition even into, university studies that they've already kind of started making a lot of their own decisions and kind of owning their work. And it's just made it a much easier transition. And then also, when things get difficult in the school year and you're like, okay, well, this is kind of what you chose to do, so we got to stick with it and, persevere through it. So definitely autonomy, I think, and having some independence for them. And I also think that in those kind of tween years, what, some people call middle school or junior high or whatever, you want to call those years for education, it's definitely a transition from the younger to like the high school credit kind of things. And I think that there is a tendency I've kind of seen over the years to where you kind of spin your wheels in in those tween years to where they're not quite doing high school work, but they're not doing elementary work. And what I have kind of done, and I don't know, we'll see down the road if it ends up having been the right thing or not. But I think not spinning your wheels in those years and letting them challenge themselves. If they've done all of kind of the elementary math, go to the next stage of algebra. It doesn't matter if they're 12 or 13 or 14 or, let them go on to the next stage. Let them study high school level biology in the tween years if that's what they're interested in. I don't think there is a reason to necessarily hold them back in those years and those kind of middle years, nor is there a reason, to push them beyond what they're ready for and capable of. But I don't think you don't have to wait until they're some magical high school age to do what is some magical high school level work. I think you just progress at their own pace and giving them that freedom. I think in those middle years, it really helps them transition to owning it more and to realizing, to kind of building their confidence and realizing they are capable of studying these things and giving them, like I said, the autonomy to, you have a library card. What do you want to study and check out? And check out all kinds of books in the library on, one of mine, he checked out all the physics books that he could find and just, did a lot of self-discovery. And I think that those tween years, they do have a lot of curiosity and you just need to sometimes empower them that they are capable to study the things that they want to study and to dive in and they don't have to wait. So those are a couple things. What about you, Jennifer? How have you transitioned in those younger to tween teen years?
I definitely don't feel like I was prepared for it. I mean, my formal training is in elementary education. That's definitely where I have more of a comfort level. I also will preface all of this by saying, as our girls have gotten older, I have Amelia is a rising junior, and Lucy will be a freshman this year. Moving towards and into high school has felt for me like a lot more pressure because you only get one shot at your transcript if you're home educating. That and I don't want my children's opportunities to be limited by my
Mhm.
lack of foresight or my lack of intentionality or things that I was unintentionally ignorant to. So I will say that there has definitely been plenty of opportunity for me to feel like, oh boy, I'm not sure what I'm doing, and I really want to honor my children's gifts and their future. I'm not sure if I'm doing all that I can. And yet at the same time, God says, I can make the grass grow if you will just let me water
Mm,
it. And so just be faithful right now with what I'm telling you to do. And we've had a lot of interesting opportunities to kind of mix things up. We've done a mix of all through the years of co-ops, being home full time and no co-ops. We've also done kind of book club format, which was a little less formal, involving your family, Gretchen, and several other families in the younger years. But then as your kids start getting a little bit older and they start making different choices about what level they want to progress to, or just different things like that, their needs start changing. And so, whether it's a live online class or an online self paced class or a class that's in person at a local homeschool, it's sort of like a co-op, but it's just sort of a buffet of classes for all ages. We did that for the last several years, and that was a good fit for our family at that time because you just pick and choose what your child needs. So every community has a different matrix of options, but
mhm,
through the internet, there's a lot that's available. Not all kids enjoy online learning. I have one that doesn't mind, and then I have another one who's really opposed to anything online. And so that's one of those preferences that I've had to learn to honor, and I'm
mhm.
willing to do that whenever I can. So I would say too, I agree with what you're saying about don't be shy about moving on to that next level of math. Or if your child isn't at that next level of math and you hear that other people are talking about, oh, my kid's doing this, my kid's doing that, just know that your kid doesn't have to be an engineer. And that's okay. If they
Right.
don't love math and they're not great at it, then that's probably not a direction that your child is called to be in, as a career, and that's okay. So just, I think too, like calling out the gifts and the skills and the
Mhm.
strengths that you see in your child to help shape the way that they view themselves within their educational experience, because both of our girls are really good at math, but neither of them like love it particularly. And then I love math. And so we have, and I see a broader purpose in math than just utility. So the way that we talk about things that are hard, math is not just so that you can work out, so that you know how to do calculus problems in everyday life. That's probably not going to happen. But we don't go to the gym. You, Gretchen, don't go to the gym. We'll discuss more about that in our fitness and wellness series. A person one who goes to the gym does not go because you're going to have to be lifting heavy things every day. You go to build strength, you go to build
Mhm.
resilience, you go to build longevity. It's not just about utility. So
Right.
when your student is approaching things and having to do things that are hard, whether it's foreign language and Latin declensions or hard formulas in science or math, whatever that is, part of education is learning how to shape their narrative towards a healthy conversation in their minds, how they think about themselves when they have to engage in hard things, because that's an opportunity for the enemy to slip in too and say,
Mhm.
you're a failure. You're dumb. You're not intelligent. You're not good enough. And the enemy's so ready. He's so ready to speak those things to our children. And so we have to shape how our kids view and experience the hard things in their education. Math and science, those things. There are some kids who just get it really naturally. And then there's other kids who are the more like creative and artistic, and whether they're musicians or whatever. I think helping your child stay focused and continue thinking about education and themselves in a healthy way involves knowing who they are. Part of educating our children, whether your children are home with you or whether they're in a more traditional school setting, part of education is helping them think about themselves in a healthy way when they are challenged and having a hard time with something. And that can be, that could present itself probably more in the math and science area for some kids, but then there's going to be other kids who really struggle with writing. And let's hope that they don't just turn on Chat GPT. Like that
Right.
article that you sent me today, I read it all and it
Yes.
was just really, that is a different episode. So helping our kids navigate the frustration that they will definitely face. Part of educating is helping our children navigate the hard things because that will go beyond just school for them. That is something that
Yes.
they will need for the wholeness of their lives. Another part of education, which I think does need to start in the early years, but it's so important to continue as your kids get older, is helping to form and curate their version of what's beautiful, their appetite for beauty, because what the world says is beautiful is not always what's true and good. And so whether it's beautiful classic art or sculpture or visiting a local museum or even just printing out on your printer at home beautiful classic pieces of art that are in the public domain that you can access, or just looking at a slideshow online, or just putting beautiful art up on the slideshow on your TV in your living room. It doesn't have to be a lesson where you sit down and talk about it. Sometimes it can be just passive exposure that's intentional on your
Mm,
part, but your kids are just kind of bumping into it. It's part of your family culture. When the TV is, when we're not sitting down watching something, maybe the slideshow is of, pieces of art by Rembrandt, or maybe it's, Monet, or maybe it's, something more current. But be intentional about how you expose your children to beautiful things.
mhm,
And that will help set the bar high for their appetite for other things. And it will help them to maybe have a distaste for some of the things that are shallow and more worldly that you really want your child to not be satisfied by.
mhm.
You can also take that same approach with classical music, for example. So just have the music playing on your phone during dinner, or just turn it on in the car, or, when they come down for breakfast in the morning, you just happen to have Vivaldi on. So it doesn't always have to be this direct, we're going to sit down and this is the composer's name and this is their life and this is how they grew up. Sometimes it's just exposing them and then trusting that their curiosity will grow and there'll be an opportunity for conversation there. And those things get woven into your family culture, and that can be a really beautiful thing. But moving into like some of the gritty parts of what your preteens and teens really need to know beyond just the subjects that they learn with their school are things like time management and planning and task management and breaking a big assignment down into small chunks, and also figuring out and asking your child, do you want me to help you break this down, or do you want to give it a go? Do you want me to help you fill out this calendar, or do you want to try first? You give it your first shot, and then we look at it together. Different kids are going to want different things, but the time and task planning is huge. That is something that I really value, and I actually enjoy the discipline of planning. The ideal everyday life is that the things value having a paper calendar in my hand that is complete and very visual, and I can add and edit and whatever. And that is something that has been very beneficial. I've seen our girls grow to kind of take that on and realize the importance of it. But sometimes mistakes are a great teacher.
I think that's so good what you mentioned about like helping them plan and the calendar and things because all of mine have wanted and you ended up using something different from the other. One of mine was all about a calendar and filling in all the dates and different things and projects. And then another one of mine used note cards and had a note card for every day with a to-do list and things like that. So I think helping them figure out in those tween teen years kind of what works best for you as far as planning your schedule and keeping track of dates and deadlines and things like that. And like you said, that's something for life that's going to help them. And so much of what you shared, Jennifer, reminded me of the Charlotte Mason philosophy that education is a life. And I think that's so important that it's not just the school hours, but it truly is just a life together of learning and exploring and figuring things out. So that was so good, so helpful.
I think another part of what she says with that is it's an atmosphere, a discipline,
Yes.
and a life. And that atmosphere is, play the beautiful music in your home and in the car, display the beautiful artwork on on your TV while everybody's just hanging out and coming and going. And then the discipline part, the discipline to manage the things that you are responsible for stewarding. And sometimes mistakes are really great teachers. So missing a deadline and having points deducted off of your grade, or having to stay up until the early morning hours to finish a paper that you've known about for 3 weeks, that can also be a good teacher too. And being exhausted the next day, that's a sometimes that's a better instruction than what I could give if I'm kind of fussing and nagging my child. You need to start this paper. You haven't worked on this paper. I think every parent has to kind of figure out what that appropriate level of kind of pressure or involvement from you as the parent. You have to figure out, like, what's the appropriate level of involvement from me, and what degree of, what's the word, mistakes or
Hmm.
difficulties am I okay with my child making for themselves as a result?
When you talk about beauty and incorporating beauty, it just reminds me of the times when we have gone to so many of the national parks. And
Mm,
so just being in nature and experiencing that natural beauty, there is just nothing like it. Just seeing, the huge mountains and waterfalls and cliffs and things. So, yes, exposing them to beauty in all the stages of life, right? It's so good, and it does create that appetite, and it kind of whets that appetite for beautiful for beautiful things. So, that's really
mm,
good. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you have enjoyed this series on education, and we look forward to continuing the discussion as we move into education in the young adult and seasoned adult years. Thank you for joining us.